Do you have our order, the order of the text again? I just want to make sure I'm remembering it correctly.
Score.
Yeah.
I mean, first.
Yeah. That's. I did remember it correctly.
Yeah, I think so. That would be tremendous. But she should leave and show it. The three of us should be up here. The three should be up, I think. Yeah.
Sure.
I think so.
Bonsoir et bienvenue à la lecture Double Champ ce soir. Je suis très heureuse de présenter CARLA, HARRYMAN, Barrett Watten et Guy LELONG. Et je les remercie beaucoup d'avoir accepté de lire ici ce soir. Malheureusement, Donatien Michel Dansa, qui devait être ici et interpréter le stade de Guy LELONG, a pris une très mauvaise nouvelle et ne pourra pas être avec nous ce soir. C'est donc Guy LELONG qui, au pied levé, la remplacera. Barrett Watten est poète et critique. Sa récente étude consacrée au moment constructiviste a reçu le prix René Vellec en 2004. En 1985 était paru un recueil d'essais critiques intitulé Total Syntax. Son œuvre poétique constitue une expérimentation avec et entre les genres. On peut citer la collection de poèmes Frame, 1971-1990, Bad History, un poème en prose non narratif qui inclut de l'histoire, et Progress Under Erasure, volume qui publie ensemble 2 longs poèmes. Il a participé à 2 projets expérimentaux d'écriture en collaboration, dont notamment The Grand Piano, dont vous trouverez les 7 premiers volumes même ici. Donc ça s'appelle The Grand Piano, du nom du lieu à San Francisco où avaient lieu les lectures d'un mouvement poétique littéraire qui s'appelle Language Poetry ou Language Writing. Donc c'est une tentative d'autobiographie collective prévue en 10 volumes qui a commencé à apparaître en 2006 et dont il y a donc déjà 7 volumes. Il est lui-même un des fondateurs du mouvement Language. Il a été l'éditeur de la revue This dans les années 70 et de Poetics Journal avec Lynn Hedgenian dans les années 80. En français a paru Plasma Parallèle X dans une traduction de Martin Richet qui nous fait l'amitié d'être là ce soir et qui a traduit des poèmes de Barrett Watten et de CARLA, HARRYMAN. Et Barrett Watten enseigne à Wayne State University à Détroit.
Thank you. I'm going to begin by reading some sections from the opening part of the Grand Piano. And the Grand Piano is a multi-authored work written by 10 people. So it's a little difficult to explain, but I'll try to do it quickly. There are 10 authors who are writing 10 volumes of this autobiographical work that recalls San Francisco in the period in which we all met and formed a group of writers. And we've published 7. Number 8 is at press. 9 and 10 will be out this year. And so by the end of the year, there will be 10 volumes written by 10 authors, and the relationship of each author to each volume changes. So I'm going to read the paragraphs from the beginning of the Grand Piano. It's the Grand Piano 1, Section 2. These are selected paragraphs, so you'll just get a sense of the way that this memoir is working. So, to begin, Grand Piano 2, Love. On 29th June 1978, we performed Louis Zukofsky's A24 to an overflowing audience at the Grand Piano. We comprised 4 voices and accompaniment. Lynn was story. C and Steve split the drama parts. I was poetry, and Kit took the role of thought. Bob played Celia Zukofsky's selections of Handel on the piano. I'll never forget the triumphant assertion of my line, voice, a voice blown, scored for haute voix, which thundered through our carefully staged cacophony. It truly echoed through the ruins of a cathedral constructed of fragments of language, one built from the perspective of a non-believer as well. One tried to listen deeply into its opacities and overtones, to the heart of the masterpiece's simultaneous coherence and dissonance. one found the text to be, as Zukofsky anticipated throughout his career, both an instruction in epistemology and a demonstration of its failure.
Je n'oublierai jamais l'assertion triomphale de mon vers, voix, une voix proférée, écrit pour très haute voix, qui retentit parmi la cacophonie soigneusement mise en scène. Elle résonna véritablement parmi les ruines d'une cathédrale faite de fragments de langue, cathédrale bâtie par un athée qui plus est. Nous nous efforcions de tendre l'oreille à ces profondeurs opaques et suggestives pour entendre le cœur du chef-d'œuvre, sa cohérence et sa dissonance simultanée. Nous découvrions ce que ce texte était, comme Zukofsky l'avait pressenti tout au long de sa carrière, à la fois une éducation en épistémologie et une démonstration de son échec.
I remember talking with an editor at UC Press who helped bring out A, and later the first book of Zukofsky criticism, which Ron immediately panned in Poetics Journal, about our production, particularly its opacity. She said, yes, it's like my Jewish relatives, everybody trying to talk at this table at the same time. At the same time, A24 is the apotheosis of the Christian tradition, possibly one of the most redemptive moments in American literature. See him? Whom? The Son of Man. Was all that redemptiveness being written, as it were, with tongue-in-cheek? On my bookshelf, I have a work of critical theory titled Perversion and Utopia. Would that be a good guide to Zukofsky? Was he putting us on? Was the obduracy of his writing perverse or transcendent, and how would we know? A form of misdirected aim, gesticulating all the while deferring entry into Jerusalem. Were we participating in a grand joke at the expense of our entry into tradition, or were we signing our names in blood to a higher order of retrospectively confirmed literariness that would, in a reassuring way, contain us and all the cacophonous eruptions of this moment of filial piety to our modernist master? For all our careful scoring of textual emphasis, were we of the avant-garde the original misreaders? In the event, I had a suspicion that something like that might be the case, that we had in part misrecognized Zukofsky's endorsement of our own arguably more radical project. At the same time, we wanted his endorsement. We wanted to claim him as our own. And we were in love. Note that the concept of we here has perceptibly changed. Suspicious of each other, we entered into the binding constraints of a publicly authorized performance, eyes fixed straight ahead, concentrating on our task and the text in hand, which was to give over, to render Zukofsky in a form that would be meaningful as it was directly addressed to the outer limits of what in language could be known. We performed the text as if it could be known in language in order to have that knowledge, to assume it as our own. We were married by Zukofsky in the state of modernist apotheosis, county of temporal crisis. Later, in temporal fact and legal fiction, as it happened, we were married in the state of California, county of Alameda, in the same Alameda County Courthouse where Edwin W. Meese, later Attorney General, ruled the roost for many years as one of the last representatives of the old guard Republican oligarchy that made the city of Oakland mean what it did to everyone at the time: repression. There is a famous photograph of Black Panther Party members raising their fists at the Art Deco monument of the Alameda County Courthouse. I was in the crowd of supporters that witnessed that salute. Later, Meese would return as facilitator of the Meese Commission report, another document of oppression. Let us pause to remember Edwin W. Meese. As I later wrote, our marriage domesticated the courthouse. This writing is his tombstone. We survived.
Nous avons été mariés par Zukofsky dans l'état de l'apothéose moderniste, dans le comté de la crise temporelle. Plus tard, dans le fait temporel et la fiction légale, comme il s'est trouvé, nous nous sommes mariés dans l'État de la Californie, dans le comté d'Alameda, précisément dans le palais de justice qu'Edwin W. Meese, qui devint plus tard ministre de la Justice, régenta de nombreuses années. Meese était un des derniers représentants de la vieille garde de l'oligarchie républicaine qui avait rendu pour tout le monde, à l'époque, la ville d'Oakland synonyme d'oppression. Il existe une photographie célèbre où les membres du parti des Black Panthers se tiennent le poing levé devant le monument art déco du tribunal du comté d'Alameda. J'étais dans la foule de sympathisants qui assistèrent à ce salut. Plus tard, Meese devait revenir en tant qu'animateur du rapport de la commission Meese, nouvel exemple d'oppression. Interrompons-nous ici pour évoquer la mémoire d'Edwin W. Meese. Comme je l'ai écrit plus tard, notre mariage domestica le tribunal. Cet écrit est sa pierre tombale, nous avons survécu.
I didn't steal from Zukofsky, and I never wanted him not to exist. I read him over and over again in the late 1960s. I read him at the beach, on the bus, on the top of Mount Tamalpais. The poems in all were as good as nature. They were a kind of second nature, better than the first. And of course, quite fitting for someone as belated as myself, these poems were, as second nature, an order of art predicated on belatedness. There is not an original Zukofsky. There is the Zukofsky who wrote and pared down what he wrote until all that was left is what survived. In many ways, his position vis-à-vis the modernist masters, who will make one feel belated, if anyone will, is an apt analogy to our own, or my own. I was 20 years old when I first read Zukofsky, but wondered what had kept me away so long.
Je n'ai pas volé Zukofsky et je n'ai jamais souhaité qu'il n'existât pas. Je l'ai lu maintes et maintes fois à la fin des années 60. Je le lisais à la plage, dans le bus, au sommet du mont Tamalpais. Les poèmes de Hall étaient comme la nature. Ils étaient une sorte de seconde nature meilleure que la première. Et bien sûr, ce qui était tout à fait approprié pour quelqu'un d'aussi en retard que moi, ces poèmes relevaient, en tant que seconde nature, d'un ordre de l'art fondé sur le retard. Il n'existe pas un Zukofsky original. Il y a le Zukofsky qui a écrit et réduit ses écrits jusqu'à ce que ne reste que ce qui a survécu. De bien des façons, sa position vis-à-vis des maîtres modernistes, qui sont les premiers à vous donner le sentiment d'arriver trop tard, constitue une analogie appropriée de la nôtre, ou de la mienne. J'avais 20 ans quand j'ai lu Zukofsky pour la première fois, et je me suis demandé pourquoi j'avais tant tardé.
Love in Zukofsky is finely suspicious. It is the trope by which particulars become, under the aspect of eternity, guarantors of an imminent sameness of perduring experience, figured in advance. That such an experience should have value, particularly literary value, was also belatedly prefigured, as his modernist predecessor had written, "What thou lovest well shall remain." The rest, meaning myself and my friends, well, we would be forever outside the heavenly compact that would make literariness a matter of who got there first. Love, as the end of a poetic tradition, at least in America, is authoritarian.
L'amour chez Zukofsky est au final suspect. C'est le trope par lequel les singuliers deviennent, sous l'aspect de l'éternité, les garants d'une uniformité immanente, d'une expérience qui perdure, figurée d'avance. Qu'une telle expérience ait de la valeur, particulièrement une valeur littéraire, fut aussi préfigurée tardivement. Comme son prédécesseur moderniste l'avait écrit, « Ce que tu aimes demeurera ». Le reste, c'est-à-dire moi et mes amis, eh bien nous serions à jamais en dehors de l'alliance céleste qui ferait de la littérarité une question de qui est arrivé là le premier. L'amour, comme fin d'une tradition poétique, au moins en Amérique, est autoritaire.
Clearly, there is love and there is love. Love is divided, is not one thing, is a division in us. We came together to produce Zukofsky's A24, and that was a kind of love. And there was another. The one turned into the other. CARLA anticipated this herself in the penultimate scene from Third Man, in which the woebegone community eats a collective pudding, a gray pudding made from tapioca and shaving cream that Greg Goodman found to be inedible, gagging and almost vomiting in the final run-through. The pudding, sub specie eternitatis, represented community, ironically inverted. CARLA anticipated what we all anticipated, but it was not the heavenly reading group in the sky. Ironically meant that particulars are inverted, had been perverted from their original aim. From what knowledge held in common to what aporia? I continue to read this alterity in CARLA's writing, whose perverse utopias far surpass the ethical stakes of the ironic literary heaven Zukofsky wished. Zukofsky proposed a risk that we accepted, to be a part of his perverse redemption, his ironic send-up of the Christian high humanist literary tradition as a joke for the ages, even as we knew the better of it. The heaven we would get, in any case, would be in the act of reading, a deferred particularity. It turned out, I thought, that Zhukovsky had better be read as a Marxist. That would put his sense of particulars right back down on the ground, back in the world where they came from, and we are, if belatedly. Our reading was not originary and not in homage to any original. It was, however, always at the beginning of a series of acts, from that one until now, as we are only just finding out. Hence, it would not be possible to have done with epistemology. Equally so, it would not be possible to write transparently in the name of love. A lady asked me why the object of love in this writing is not named. It is because where love is authoritarian will, the construction of its object can only be ideology. Milton's Eve is a construction, an important one for his literary authority and the perverse utopia it names. But in the real world, where love is true affection, C stands for CARLA, obdurate love. Okay, let's just go to radio. Yeah. So I'm now going to read a poem in 4 stanzas that is belated almost to the point of extremity. And there are 4 points of transmission to this poem. The first one probably begins somewhere with Tristan Tzara and cycles through Lee Harwood's translation. Then my own working with the language of that translation, and finally the translation into French. All along I'm thinking of Jack Spicer's gloss on Cocteau's Orpheus and the ways in which incomprehensible messages are received in that film. So I'll read the stanzas and we'll alternate the stanzas in the French translation. Radio. Conviction fills the body. The presence of dead souls, flute-like at the base of the ear. A particle enters the soundings, suddenly open, a door, separating bright from careless patterning, forcing a language memory designs from sleep. The body is more primitive, attached to the ground. A frame lights up horizons to lead forward, larger than life.
Radio. La conviction emplit le corps, la présence d'âmes mortes, cannelées à la base de l'oreille. Une particule pénètre les sondages, soudain ouverte, une porte, séparant les modélisations brillantes des irréfléchis, forçant une langue que la mémoire dessine à partir du sommeil. Le corps est plus primitif, attaché au sol. Un cadre illumine les horizons, à pousser plus avant, plus grand que nature.
Animals eat words, exercise this great and glassy news. The end of the road, a walking flower, as in any direction, another. Peripheries meet, a syntactic forecast through hostile centuries, a slow drawing out of detail, reflecting grays. To confirm, the ear catches, is measured until it disappears. Breaking code, no one recalls, appeal to the surface of fact.
Les animaux mangent des mots, exorcisent ces grandes nouvelles vitreuses. La fin de la route, une fleur en marche. Comme en toute direction, une autre. Les périphéries se rencontrent, prévision syntaxique au cours de siècles hostiles. Lente perpétuation du détail, reflétant les gris. Pour confirmer, l'oreille capte, est mesurée jusqu'à sa disparition. Brisant les codes, personne ne se souvient de l'appel à la surface du fait.
The flames are sponges in smoke-blackened hour, blighted fruits words can't grasp. Among stations immeasurable across fields, a flashing sign fixes only certainty, 2 eyes blinking through a door. The missing head must be seen whole, where one word leads clouds to accident of end. The machine never tires, edges of stations start to come in.
Les flammes sont des éponges, à l'heure noircie de fumée, fruits rouillés, insaisissables par les mots. Parmi des stations incommensurables au-delà de champs, Un signal clignotant fixe seulement la certitude. 2 yeux clignent par une porte. La tête manquante doit être vue entière. Où mène un mot? Nuage à l'accident de fin. La machine jamais ne peine. Des bords de station commencent à rentrer.
The head of a king's son multiplies at crossroads, an immutable exchange. You are the world, wings of oblivion and endless drilling, a shadow of things to come, the wind on their heels. In pursuit of a ship in harbor, the voices of towns without body, stars without voice in space, a night for the blind, passing through his fingers the short black branches of the eye.
La tête d'un fils de roi se multiplie au carrefour. Échange immuable, tu es le monde, aile d'oubli et forage interminable, ombre de choses à venir, le vent sur leurs talons. À la poursuite d'un bateau au port, les voix des villes sans corps, étoiles sans voix dans l'espace, une nuit pour les aveugles, passant au travers de ses doigts les courtes branches noires de l'œil.
Thank you. Thank you, Abigail, for your translations. I'm going to continue with a series of shorter works that I've organized around a little bit of a theme, and the theme will be given by the first poem, Negative. So negativity trumps. Negative. And now Martin Richet is going to be reading translations with me. Negative. At the bottom of the lake is a small stream of black liquid. A sentence assumes more than it admits. Oil over water is antimatter. Water over oil? One will not look at another. Buildings turn inside out. Bright artificial lights like places to avoid. Thinking stops to generalized lines. Central figure in landscape is obliterated. For Bill Berkson.
Négatif. Il y a au fond du lac un fin torrent de liquide noir. Une phrase présuppose plus qu'elle n'admet. L'huile sur l'eau est de l'antimatière. L'eau sur l'huile, l'un ne regardera pas un autre. Les immeubles se renversent. Les lumières artificielles crues comme endroit à éviter. La pensée s'arrête aux lignes générales. Silhouette centrale du paysage est oblitéraire. Pour Bill Berkson.
The second poem I'm going to read is recovered as a recovered poem, and there's a long story about it which I won't tell, but it dates to the period of my first involvement with the French literary scene, and it's dedicated to Emmanuel Ocar, and it was actually published in an anthology way back from Orange Export Limited. And so Martin and I are going to read alternating stanzas and then translation for 40 poems. Each.
Trait, donc.
Features, therefore.
Contrepoint, désinformation.
No, features, therefore.
That's what
Features, therefore.
Je viens de faire. Trait, donc.
Okay. Excuse me. Counterpoint, misinformation.
Version.
I don't know what's going on here.
Do we?
Yeah, we should alternate, okay? So
Okay, we
each.
have to-
Let's start all over again, okay? Okay, erase the tape, start back. Okay, 40 poems, each.
Trait, donc.
Features, therefore. Trait, donc. No, wait a minute. No. Okay, we started. Shock. What happened to shock?
I thought we'd alternate.
Oh, no. No, you're gonna read the entire thing. Okay, I understand what the problem is here now. That's good. Okay, 40 poems. We'll try again. This is like what I learned from Detroit is, production, so. Each.
Chaque.
Thank you. Features, therefore.
Trait, donc.
Counterpoint, misinformation.
Contrepoint, désinformation.
Versions, outcome.
Version, aboutissement.
Edges, careless.
Friction, insouciant.
You, delayed.
Toi, différé.
It, level.
Ça, niveau.
Outside, animals.
Dehors, animaux.
Shock, exchange.
Choc, échange.
Beginning, enhancement.
Début, amélioration.
Cartons, sky.
Carton, ciel.
Identified as.
Identifié comme.
Fictional, endings.
Fictif, fin.
Pièce, what is it?
Argent.
Pieces, money.
Pièce, argent.
Fittings, time.
Raccord, temps.
Waves, agitated.
Vague, agité.
With, walls.
Avec, mur.
Screens, accident.
Écran, accident.
Trees. Spoke,
Arbre, parler.
field, rearranged.
Champ, réarrangé.
Centers, converted.
Centre, converti.
To, forgotten.
À, oublié.
Revise, effect.
Réviser, effet.
Isolate, materials.
Isoler, matériaux.
Essence, stretching.
Essence, étirement.
Sections, where.
Section, où.
Fountain, well.
Fontaine, puits.
Geometric lines.
Ligne géométrique.
Lens, water.
Lentille, eau.
Visible, design.
Motif, visible.
Continuity, tokens.
Continuité, index.
Lost, rewritten.
Perdu, réécrit.
Ancients, surrounding.
Ancêtre, environnement.
Dreams, tangent.
Rêve, tangente.
Capable, disappear.
Capable, disparaître.
Might, becomes.
Pouvoir, devient.
Act, deletion.
Acte, suppression.
Birds, outcome.
Oiseau, aboutissement.
Zero, condensed.
Zéro, condensé.
Automatic, clash.
Heurte, automatique.
Okay, for Emmanuel Okar. Dream. I am teaching a course on poetics, and the guest is Hölderlin. Someone in the class asks about the name of poetics. Hölderlin goes to the blackboard to demonstrate. He has a personal formulation for the name of poetics, drawn from his extensive reading of Heidegger. And he says, I've developed it over the years, and it's 246 long. I say 246 what? Words, phrases, characters, probably the latter. The poet starts to write it, and as he does, he asks the class to think about poetics as the archive love these characters represent. At this point, I get up to take back the class. This seems like a perfect opportunity for each of us to say what he or she thinks poetics is. In other words, the definition we carry around with us. Only to realize, as I continue to write, that 246 is the number of the room I am now staying in at a microtel in Youngstown, Ohio.
Rêve. Je suis chargé d'un cours de poétique et Hölderlin est mon invité. Quelqu'un pose la question du nom de la poétique. Hölderlin va au tableau pour sa démonstration.
Okay.
Il a tiré de sa longue fréquentation de Heidegger une théorie personnelle du nom de la poétique. Je travaille, dit-il, depuis des années, et il est long de 246 quoi 246 mots, 246 phrases, 246 signes, c'est probablement ça. Le poète se met à écrire et demande, ce faisant, à ce que l'on considère la poétique comme représentation de l'amour archive de ces signes. J'en profite pour intervenir. Belle opportunité pour que chacun dise ce qu'il pense de la poétique, c'est-à-dire que chacun énonce sa définition intérieure. Mais je comprends en écrivant que 246 est le numéro de la chambre d'hôtel que j'occupe en ce moment à Youngstown, en Ohio.
Okay, so we're going to go to Against Death. Okay, so we have time now to conclude, and I'm going to read the two most negative poems I've ever written, one after the other. The first one is called Against Death. Life has only death to end.
Contre la mort. La vie La vie n'a que la mort pour fin.
Some say death lost meaning.
Certains disent que la mort a perdu sens.
Ordinary day, ever during night.
Jour ordinaire, nuit continuelle.
Cannot speak, shrink back from.
Ne pas parler, se replier.
Others replace fact, not value.
D'autres restituent les faits, non les valeurs.
We can estimate there are others.
Nous pouvons l'estimer, les autres sont.
Culture of death ends civilization.
La culture de la mort achève la civilisation.
Several years, late last week,
Quelques années, la semaine dernière,
they estimate nothing of value.
ils n'estiment rien de valeur.
Suspend time before it happens.
Suspendre le temps avant que ça n'arrive.
Not my choice. Then you realize
Je n'ai pas choisi, tu comprends là.
forever and ever cannot think it.
Pour toujours, impossible à penser.
Story continues, then interrupt it.
L'histoire continue, donc l'interrompre.
Stop for evidence. Pictures lacking.
S'arrêter pour preuve, faute d'image.
Soul follows body. Nothing changes.
Âme suit corps, rien ne change.
Habits are broken by excitements.
L'habitude se rompt par l'excitation.
Who would think they can manage?
Qui les penserait capables de gérer?
She knew then, but he didn't.
Elle sut là, mais pas lui.
Certainty is not the mystery.
La certitude n'est pas le mystère.
Death has only writing to end.
La vie n'a que l'écriture pour fin.
Okay, and this one I'll end solo. This refers to a moment in Detroit, 2001. You might remember the date, October 2001. Anthrax. Blowing across the mid-October sky of Detroit, about 36 black, red, and blue balloons circling around what appears to be a clump of balloons, forming an irregularly shaped, multicolored mass, something like an aerial whale, surrounded by numerous smaller fish or birds. I think, what an ingenious way to distribute anthrax as the wind blows into my face and I consider which authority I should contact first. Someone should know about this. Then I reflect that the dispersal has already happened. It has already taken place. There is nothing I can do to stop it. If I die within a week, this account will be the only evidence of what had happened. Why was I the only one to notice? Thank you both for your work in the translations.
CARLA HARRYMAN est l'auteur de 14 livres. Parmi ses publications récentes, on peut citer Adorno's Noise,